when you look on the Celtics side, I already tossed it up. Jaylen Brown stat line: 12 points on 6 of 17, 2 assists, 6 rebounds. Jason Tatum, 14 points on 1 of 7 from 3 and 6 of 18 from the field. These are your two leaders. And I can't help but think that the team is falling in line behind these two guys who just are checked out at this point, it sounds like. They're just not engaged. They're not playing two-way basketball, Sherrod. Jaylen Brown has had a horrible stretch here. I don't know where it's coming from. You don't know what you're going to get from these guys on a night in, night out basis. And I feel like that's the problem. It starts at the top, whether you want to talk about Tatum or Brown or both of those guys. I don't know if there's an identity crisis going on right now within this team, but it feels like there is a captainless ship just floating into the abyss with nowhere to go.
Well, they are. I mean, they are captainless in many respects. But the thing that, and I have to remind myself, I've seen enough playoff basketball to know when you get this deep into the postseason, this is where your coach and his impact and his ability to get things done shines. I've said all along, Jimmy, I've said the playoffs have a way of exposing you, good or bad.
Yes, you have.
Joe Mazzulla has been exposed. Joe Mazzulla has been exposed as being a very good.
The whole team has been exposed. I think the Celtics players have been exposed as front runners.
But it's up to the coach to shift the narrative.
I'm not putting it on the coach.
Listen, Jimmy, I'm not saying it's all him, but damn it, he's part of the problem.
It's a big part of it.
Sure, he's definitely part of it.
We need to stop acting as if we can't call out the coach for not.
I agree.
We call him out all the time.
I agree.
Actually, we don't. But when he's had games where he's done a hell of a job, and we've made sure we talk more about his good games than we talk about Jaylen Brown's good games. And Jaylen has way more good games than Mazzulla does. But my thing is this, Jimmy. Mazzulla, you have to remember how he basically got put in this position. This wasn't a lifelong number 2 coach who was a lead assistant who finally got over that hurdle. He leapfrogged in a way that most coaches in the NBA don't get that opportunity to do. And I think Joe has gotten better as the season has progressed. But once we got to the playoffs, this was the worst coach matchup he could possibly have. The absolute worst, because the thing about Spoelstra that we talk about him as being one of the best, if not the best coach in the NBA right now. But people forget that he wasn't always viewed that way. He had to grow into that. And I think Joe Mazzulla will eventually grow into being one of the better coaches in the NBA. He's not there yet. And just like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, Spo wasn't there, but eventually he got there. He learned how to handle different types of talent. He got better. I think Joe Mazzulla will also get better, but Joe ain't there yet. And when you look about the success this team has had in the regular season, a lot of the success has to be attributed to the players. No question, Jimmy. Just like a lot of their struggles now are going to be attributed to the players, because at some point, as much as the players can carry the team, at some point the coach has got to carry the team too. At some point, the coach has to make the big, ballsy calls and decisions to shake things up that gets your team over the hump.
The other thing is, and you have to give it some thought in the case that, yes, Joe's going to develop, and I agree with you, Sherrod. You bring up a good point about Spoelstra. But for this team now, is he the guy? Because Ime Udoka was brought in, the players loved him, but it was like tough love. They talked about his toughness. And it just went, boom, the door swung totally the other way. And now it's kind of very, very loosey-goosey. Is this the team? Is this the coach for the team? Because this team seems to be a little too unserious the way it is. They don't understand big moments or something like this.
Well, the other thing, too, and again, I don't want to make this about, Joe Mazzulla's got to go. But there's some things that they need to address. One of the things they need to address without question is that bench, the assistants. I think you need a hard ass on that team right now. Someone that's going to.
Sherrod, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but has it the drop off after the All-Star break? And I'm taking this off the top of my head, but this morning I was thinking about it, and it seems to coincide with Stoudemire leaving.
Yeah, I mean, I've had many conversations with Damon Stoudemire. I've known Damon all the way back to when he was at Arizona. And he came to the Carrier Dome and gave my cues to business. And the thing that if I had to describe him in like 1 or 2 words, it would be irrationally confident. He's always been that way. And when he's working with players, you better believe that he's going to slow drip that gravitas. That's just who he is. Yeah. And when you lose someone like that and you don't feel it, you're going to see slippage in that irrationally confident state of mind. The Celtics they're going to be kicking themselves for years if they don't find a way to do what has never been done before. They would have to do what has never been done before. As far as Tatum and Brown are concerned, I'm just, they have not playing great basketball, but I'm not cutting them loose. Hell no. I will evaluate everyone in their future with this team except those two. And the reason why is because no matter what you do trade-wise involving Tatum and Brown, you are going to lose the deal because you're not going to get fair market value from a talent standpoint for those guys. Not going to happen. And they're so young where the idea of getting a bunch of draft picks the way Danny Ainge typically does things, that doesn't make a lot of sense because those guys are going to be outperforming whoever you draft for a number of years. I mean, you're looking at basically hoping that you hit the lottery jackpot and get a guy that could be maybe an all-star in like 3 or 4 years. But guess what? Tatum and Brown are still going to be all-stars. So it's like, we got rid of a guy who's, and by the way, in 3 or 4 years, they're going to be in their prime. I don't think people realize that. They still haven't hit the apex of who they can be as players. They still got 2-3 years before they're going to be there. So the rest of the team, those other 4 people I made, you absolutely have to evaluate what role, if any, they're going to have going forward. But Tatum and Brown, those two are off limits because you're not going to get anything of substance in return.
Gary asked if there's a disconnect between Joe and the players right now. And Joe specifically said, because I want to quote him specifically.
We put that video up. Yeah.
So you all saw it. You all heard it. Can we glean from that Joe has lost the team?
Well, when they play the way they played tonight, I don't know if it's, Joe's lost the team or the team has lost each other. It doesn't feel like anyone's playing connected out there. Right. So I don't know if it's a – and listen, there's a blame pie here, right? So obviously Joe is going to take a portion of that blame pie because at the end of the day, he does have to coach his guys up. It is more important in the playoffs coaching than it is in the regular season, and you do have to make adjustments. It's a bit of a chess match. He is going up against one of the best coaches in the history of the game, and I think if the team – when I look at a head coach, it's not always X's and O's. It's not always about out of timeout plays. It's about the mentality that your team has going into these games, the sense of urgency, the sense of pride, the sense of, wanting to play for each other. And, our backs are against the wall. Let's, we're on the road. We're in enemy territory. Let's be ready. It didn't feel like these guys were ready to go tonight, which I think was a surprise to everybody. I think a lot of people, even despite everything that we've seen, I think a lot of people thought that the Celtics would come out tonight with a little bit of I was hoping that they'd be a little angry. They'd come up with some attitude. They'd show that they are the better team, And it just felt like as soon as the Heat got going just a little bit, there was no comeback from the Celtics. There was no fight. They just continued to lollygag on offense, argue against the referees, not get back on defense. The Heat were whipping the ball around, and they hit a lot of their freaking shots. But guess what? That's how the Celtics won all the games this year too. They hit shots that the opponent gave them. Now the Celtics are on the other end of it.
Bad body language throughout, and that's why do, as careful as I am with the word quit, the body language was atrocious here. Tatum swinging his arm over while Duncan Robinson drove right by him, asking for a push-off call. That smart shove, man, how lucky did he get shoving? I think it was Gabe Vincent. They went to the review, and maybe the refs gave him a break because he apologized right away, but that was a pretty aggressive swing he took back at Vincent there that I think easily could have gotten him, if not ejected, then at least a flagrant one or hostile act, whatever they end up calling something like that. Brown falling down a couple of times and staying there a little long, I thought.
Smart.
Who was on this show all year saying this defense isn't right? And who asked Joe throughout the year over and over and over again, what's up with this defense? And just got barked back at repeatedly about how they were number 2, they were number 1 for this stretch of games, the rankings and this and that. They never looked right on defense this year. They never had a defensive mentality. Every time you asked about defense, Joe would turn it back to offense. And it was obvious that slipped this year. I didn't care what their ranking was. They had so many games that they just melted down on that end, and they let Isolations killed them all year. In spots, they had a great defensive rebounding in the aggregate, but in spots, they gave up offensive rebounds that killed them. And when the playoffs came around, they started fouling a lot, and there just wasn't that crispness with the switching. Not to mention the passivity of dropping as much as they did this year. The defense, it's amazing it finished too. As many holes as it seemed to have throughout this year, and it took this many games to finally acknowledge that. I've defended Joe at every turn, John. It's impossible at this point.
Sherrod, what broke them? Why are they here, Sherrod?
I think what ultimately broke them was the reality that the blueprint that they knew got them to the finals was different than the blueprint that they were being asked to play. And they tried to be good soldiers and shoot a lot of threes, and it worked for a while. But at some point, you have to get back to whatever is your core. Their core is defense, and they have never been able to get back to that because they don't have the type of coaching. And I'm not just talking about Joe. I'm talking about that entire staff that emphasizes that side of the court, because they're finding out firsthand what that looks like with Miami. Miami is all about defense. Even though they've got Jimmy Butler is a 20-point scorer, Bam Adebayo, 20-point scorer, Tyler Hero, when he's healthy, he can also be that type of scorer. But at their absolute core is defense. And the Celtics, they've gotten away from that. And they can't – they know they need to get back there, but they can't for some reason. There's like a mental block that's preventing them from getting back to playing the way that they know you have to play in order to be successful in the playoffs.
Can I meet you guys halfway on that? I think the first 26 games when they did
what
Joe
Bobby said too. But go on, John.
The first 26 games when they did what Joe said is almost kind of like the equivalent of like a slap hitter in baseball who weighs $170 hitting a home run. Like that was awesome, and that's just what you want to do over and over again. The other thing is, it was easier to win that way than it was to win with defense. So when they tried to get back to doing stuff, they tried to get back to winning the easy way instead of winning the hard way. The way they won last year, 35-40 games down the stretch and into the playoffs, was defense, which was hard. The way they won early in the season was wing the ball around, shoot a bunch of threes, play a little defense, doesn't matter because we're just going to run the teams out of the building with all of our awesome three-point shooting. I think they kept trying to go back to that rather than
they
trying
shot
to go
46 threes tonight, John.
I know.
They're trying
to go back to that rather than winning a hard way. They never committed to winning the hard way. They did it a little against Philly. You saw it. Games 2 and 3 against Philly, they got serious. They got serious on defense games 2 and 3 against Philly, and they came out in 4 and they're like, we're all set. And then they rested again. And they did it again. And then they recommitted for a little. They never really committed to the hard way at any point in time. If I had to guess halftime speeches, it would have been Joe begging the guys just to do what we do, keep working the ball, shoot threes, and like trying to get them to do the same thing instead of
look at how they played in the third.
And I bet you Spoelstra's was, we've broken them. Do not let up. They are broken. If you apply a teeny bit of pressure, it's over.
They're gonna break. They're gonna break.
They're broke.
Chuck. Start chucking away threes.
Broken them.
Yeah.
They're gonna keep doing it. Don't let them off the hook. They're broken. You apply a little pressure here and it's over. And all of a sudden, boom, 27-point lead, gone. They broke them, and they knew it. In that halftime, they were probably just strutting around. We friggin'
totally. They were chest fully puffed out at halftime.
They knew it. They broke them, and
after that first timeout in the third quarter, I want to say there was about 3, maybe 4 consecutive offensive possessions where the Celtics didn't look for the best shot. They looked for the first shot. The first opportunity, the first possession of remote space between their defender and Chuck. And right there, my knee was like, oh, we got these guys. They're broken. You're absolutely right, John. And that's exactly what happened in that third quarter. You just knew there's no way in hell these guys are coming back.
And one of those plays, Josue, Tatum's lined up against Robinson. And that's the name of the game there, working that mismatch, getting the ball around and finding the right shot. But you're right, it was the first shot. And when you're chasing trying to drive yourself back with threes when they're not falling. This is something I always question in the postseason when it's a smaller sample size. What are we talking about? About 100 threes in the series so far between 3 games? Celtics are shooting 29%. And they're not working for great ones. They're just trying to get them up there and meet like a quota, it feels like. And they struggled to get there because the Heat were taking it away in games 1 and 2. You talked about that great spoke cut, John. Tonight, it felt like we got to get to 46. We got to get, we got to approach 50. And in that third quarter, especially, they just fired them up.
Instead of heart again, and I don't even think this was. I don't think the second half was the math stuff. Sorry, Jimmy. I believe it was what Josue said. Done. Whatever. I'm just going to jack it here. It's hard work trying to work for good shots. We're not able to get them. First bit of daylight I see, I'm just going to let it fly, and hopefully they start going in. That's it. That's
Jalen chunked like
that's
a
like second night of a
35-footer.
back-to-back sort of basketball, right?
Right. I mean, Jalen chunked like a 35-footer, and it was like 5-6 seconds into the possession. After they cross half court, I'm just like, these guys this is it. This is the way they want to play. This is the lazy chucking shots. Not to mention he airballed a wide open 3 from Jalen. Just airball.
Really bad airballs. Over the last 3 years, where this core has really been in command, you never had a leader emerge. Even last year, when everything was going great. Remember the captain stuff, John? They didn't want it. They didn't want to be the leaders. They didn't want the accountability. They didn't want to be the one that links people together or addresses deficiencies.
We got killed for making a thing out of the captain thing. I'm still.
It's true.
I really don't believe people understood how bad that was. A new head coach was like, "I'm trying to appoint leaders," and everyone was like, "Nah, not me."
Mm-hmm.
We're all leaders.
That was unbelievable to me. It really was. That spoke volumes, but again, you forget about it because.
And so we're all looking at the
season
coach.
Turned around at the end of the year, so everyone forgot about it. That was a stunning development to me. That still says something about these guys.
We're all looking at the coach, waiting for him to be the leader again, and he's not Ime. He doesn't have the experience. He doesn't have the cachet. He doesn't have a lot of the things that Ime did. The presence, and even just the critical tone. The no holds bars approach to coaching. He's not Ime. He's a different coach. So expecting him to be that and relying on him to be that to hold yourself accountable as a team, it's not going to work. So this goes to Sherrod's point. You're going to find another guy to take that mantle, and that's what you're going to rely on, the guy on the sideline. You're going to rely on the timeout. You're going to rely on just someone else to save you, the ref. At some point, and this is why Ime even at times didn't call timeouts and really, didn't call plays and really try to make these guys handle things on their own. They had to figure it out, and we're so many years into them not figuring it out, not really getting it, or not coming together. I mean, that's what it feels like a lot of the times to me is one player has some idea of what needs to change or what needs to be fixed. Another guy thinks everything's fine. Another guy thinks, let's go, guys, let's go. And they're just all over the place.
But even their coach wasn't accountable. Every single time something would go wrong, he'd tell you everything was fine. We just need to shoot more threes. It was a trend almost throughout the whole team all season long. It's like, if we just do what we're supposed to do, we'll be fine. There's been that feeling that you could always fall back on, and now you're just getting punched in the mouth over and over again, and you're just simply not ready for it.
And did he just feel the need? Because we did hear at times Joe would get into these guys behind the scenes. But did he feel the need to tiptoe around them publicly? I'm sure he did, because I don't think Joe was just unwilling to be critical. I think he just felt that to keep this room, to command some level of leadership over them, he needed to have everybody in his corner. So he said, I'm just not going to criticize anybody ever. And
it's just consistently who he is. Win by 30, just a game. Get your ass kicked by 30, just a game.
Too cool.
I don't understand how there can be no one with fire, angst, attitude on this freaking roster. I mean, they're ridiculously talented, because that's the only way you can win as many games as they have and not have that type of player, someone that plays has an edge to them. This is the level of disappointment on every level of management, coaching, players, execution, front office, go down the line. Is probably as high now as it's ever been in the last decade or so on all those different fronts. Usually
go ahead.
Usually the one or two of those, it's real bad, but everything about this organization right now is in question.
I can't recall, like, I'm trying to think a team in Boston sports laying down, in this manner, and going out. And I can't right now, like nothing recent. Like I know Patriots got destroyed by the Bills a couple of years ago in the playoffs, but that was just a mismatch. It was David Goliath and True Colors came out. A team that's supposed to be this talented, literally just laying down and saying, I'm all set. I don't recall it. Like, I'm sorry guys, but like, if you talk about like playing here and it mattering or it meaning something and this and that, like you just disgraced yourselves in an extremely, like, just a major way that's not going to be forgotten. Like this is you'll be remembered like forever for this. It really is gross. You have a responsibility. You play in this market, you play for this team, you play in front of fans that like care as much as they do.
You're a different team.
I know it's just sports,
something like this too.
But this is hard to come back from. This is disgraceful. Like this is stamped. It's imprinted. Like on your DNA. Like this is who you are. Laying down like this is so bad. I couldn't believe. I honestly I can't believe they laid down like this.
There's nothing left Joe can say either. Tatum, Brown, the leadership core of this team, they're going to have to make some sort of charge here in this series. And again, you're not thinking this is going to be the first team that comes down from 3-0, but make everybody believe in this again. Because if you go down in blowout fashion in Game 4 and nobody's caring, nobody's together, maybe a blame game starts internally, even if it doesn't get out there publicly, or guys are internalizing blame on whoever, you're not going to be able to come back from this, as John said. I mean, these are the kind of losses that end teams. You think of Phoenix's devastating loss to Dallas a couple of years ago, and there's probably other examples I can't think of off the top of my head. Great teams can crumble off of moments like this, and man, this feels fractured. And guys are going to look to Tatum. I mean, Tatum's the one with the ball in his hands. Tatum's the guy who everything is built around, and it feels like a lot of the time everyone looks at him and he just kind of shrugs. Well, like and this is why I hate.
Wouldn't you say, Bobby, that the Celtics are kind of playing as a team, as Tatum sort of plays and carries himself typically right now? It feels like.
Yeah, they follow his lead, and he just hasn't really been present for a lot of the series. We asked him, at shoot around today about. Another report asked him about kind of getting himself involved again when the double team comes, and he's like, we like to play 4-on-3 and get downhill and take advantage of mismatches after I get off the ball, and it's so passive. I mean, if he wanted to, he could go get the ball again. He could go make a cut and get back on the ball, and they set themselves up for tonight by losing 2 bad games where he was just not present in the fourth quarter. That's on him. I mean, this is Joe's going to get all of the blame. This is on Jason Tatum. This is his team. This is on him.
It's on Tatum and Brown.
Yeah.
I mean,
agreed.
And I'm going to exempt
Some
Brown.
way to get out of this.
I'm going to exempt Brown to some degree because he tried this year to put his imprint on the team, but it was just really hard to from the position he's in. They could have worked things out better to kind of have more of an even balance at the top of the team. But sometime last year, this became Tatum's team, John. It's not Tatum and Brown.
It's been Tatum's team, but you have 2 problems. One, you have what you want to do with Tatum, which is what like the Lakers do or have always done, or any team has done with LeBron. What you see the Miami Heat do with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler said it after last game. What's your plan in the fourth quarter? Nothing really. They just give me the ball and then I just kind of go to work. And you either score, you make the right read, and you find people and you run the offense. That's what they want Tatum to do. He doesn't do it. He doesn't do it well enough to do that. And so when they ask him to do that, you're going to get mixed results. Sometimes it's going to work. Sometimes he's going to go off. But for the most part, you're getting mixed results off it. And Jaylen Brown is just when I get the ball in my hands, I can do one thing with it. So I'm going to try. And sometimes he goes off, and other times everything is forced. But again, their limitations are really on display against a team that exposes your flaws and lays them bare for everyone to see. So you kind of see it here. So I don't know what you do here at this point. I think it's almost back to the drawing board of what we were talking about with this team a while back of like needing a dynamic playmaker with the ball in their hands.
I was just thinking
another
that.
dirty secret on this team that nobody wants to talk about is you look at point guard depth. And they have 3 outstanding players at the point guard position, and not a one of them is a dynamic playmaker, as a person who can dominate the ball, make plays, get it to the right people, creates a gravity towards themselves because of who they are. It just isn't the case. So you have a lot of people that can do a lot of different things, but the pieces are a little bit mismatched here because you want Tatum to have the ball all the time. What the hell are you doing with these point guards then? You know?
I mean, how much was Brogdon empowered to fix their issues this year, especially this series?
Yeah, like what are these guys doing here? You have no idea. And then what's Brown's role? Do I stand in the corner, or every once in a while do you give me the ball and then I get to shoot? It's really weird, like this whole
And doesn't that whole thing seem like it's reaching a boiling point fast? Like
but it's
his
always been there.
With
That's the
being
thing
in the corner.
It's there, right? Like this whole can Tatum and Brown play together thing that when they win a few games, everyone's like, oh, people should split these guys up. They're not a great match together. They kind of step on one another, or they haven't figured out how to work with one another, off one another. They haven't.
For whatever reason, there is a lack of it's not talent. These guys are extremely talented basketball players, but there's something on the character side.
Accountability, Jimmy.
There's something somewhere lacking in the leadership role. And whether you want to go back to the example of nobody wanted the captaincy, whether you want to go back to there's no guy who wants to take on the Jimmy Butler stopper role. There's no guy that wants to be angry. There's no something that you're looking for in your leaders to take you to that next level. So unfortunately, I just don't believe in these guys anymore. I'll feel that way next year. If it's the same general makeup of these guys and they go out the way they do, I have no reason to believe in these guys moving forward. I just don't.
If you run it back, it could go really poorly.
I don't think I think you have to look at the coach and you have to look at the core if you go out this way. I don't think there's any choice. The common theme is not how far you made it. The common theme is that when you faced a team that made life hard on you,